All right, I'm going to call this meeting of the Auburn City Council to order on August 28th, 2023. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Amara.
Present.
Berlant.
Here.
Holmes.
Here.
Vice Mayor Riddell Harris.
Here. Will you please all join me in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome you all here. I'd especially like to welcome Jason Gilding from Troop 13 from Auburn. He's working on his badge tonight, so thank you for coming. And then, we're going to move into the mayor's commendations, proclamations, and acknowledgements. We have a proclamation for Hunger Action Month. So if we could have Denise Weiss-Hoffman come up from the Auburn Interfaith Food Club. Oh, great.
Andy Hayes.
Nice to meet you. All right. Is this on? Okay, great. Okay, so the city of Auburn is proclamation is for Hunger Action Month is September 2023. Whereas Feeding America designated the month of September as Hunger Action Month, and hunger and poverty are issues of serious concern in the greater Auburn area. And there are Auburn area individuals and families who have difficulty covering housing, utility, transportation, medical, and food expenses on their income. And the Auburn Interfaith Food Closet and the agency partner of Placer Food Bank provided groceries for 186,085 meals to 16,026 individuals in 2022, recognizing there is an ongoing need in our community. And the Auburn Interfaith Food Closet provides nutrition information and recipes to encourage families to try new, healthier food. And these individuals live in the areas between Immigrant Gap and Loomis and between Forest Hill and Lake of the Pines. And these individuals need healthy food to reduce the risk of illness. And the Adventist Community Services and the Auburn Salvation Army are also providing food assistance. And because these agencies rely on financial and food donations from our community, the city of Auburn encourages its citizens and businesses to support these organizations. And the Auburn Interfaith Food Closet is hosting a neighborhood food drive on Saturday, September 30th, 2023. And the food collected during this drive can be delivered to the food closet at 1788 Auburn Ravine Road, Auburn, California, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that I, Rachel Riddell Harris, Vice Mayor of the City of Auburn, on behalf of the City Council, hereby recognize September as Hunger Action Month and encourage all of its citizens and businesses to support the efforts of local food agencies to reduce hunger in our area. Thank you very much. Thank you for all you do for the community.
The Food Closet appreciates all the great support we get from the council, from the residents. Just to give you a sense, the numbers we wrote for 2022 represented almost a doubling from 2021 with the number of people needing food. And we're going up 2% a month in 2023. So the food, we are continuing to see people struggle. About 750 families a month are coming to us. 2/3 of those have Auburn zip codes. So it is a prevalent issue in our neighborhood. We're here to help and we appreciate all the support you give us. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to the adoption of the agenda. This is the time set aside for council members and or the public to ask for removal, postponement, or change to the listed sequence of an agenda item. The agenda will be approved by consensus of the council. There's no roll call. Do I hear any changes to the agenda? Okay, then that agenda is approved. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. All matters listed under consent calendar are considered to be routine in nature and will be approved by one blanket motion with a roll call vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless persons requested specific items to be removed from the consent calendar. for discussion and separate action. Any items removed will be considered after the motion to approve the consent calendar. Do you have any items that you'd like removed?
Yes,
Okay,
item 3 and item 5.
okay,
Madam Vice Mayor, we'll be pulling number 10.
Okay.
And then potentially pull it off the agenda completely, potentially bring it back. But at this point, we're not ready to move forward with that.
okay. So we're pulling item 10 entirely, so no discussion.
Right.
I'm going to pull item number 8. And, okay, so do I hear a motion on the rest of the consent calendar? Oh, we need public comment. Sorry, thank you. Is there any public comment on the consent calendar? Yes.
I also have one comment on item number 9 before you, and their copies already provided to the council and also copies here for the public should they wish to see it, is a revised amendment number 2 for that. It is the same substance as what appeared in the agenda when it was published last week. It does have an integration clause at the end, which incorporates the first amendment to the agreement and also the agreement itself. Otherwise, no other changes. Happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Madam Vice Mayor, with that, I would like to move that we approve the consent agenda without items 3, 5, 8, or 10.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Amara,
Yes.
Berlant,
Aye.
Holmes,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Riddell Harris.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, so moving on to item number 3. The report of investments, quarter ending June 30th, 2023.
Yes. Let me,
Councilmember Holmes, did you have some questions?
yes. And I'm wondering why this is on the consent agenda. Seems to me this is something that should be presented by the city treasurer as a report. And I noticed that it says the purpose of the treasurer's report is to update the board. I'm not sure what that means. I guess that means the council, but and I'm wondering when there's a thing in here about the the city investment policy, when the last time the investment policy was revised.
Donna Silva, City Treasurer.
Thank
I'd be happy to address those comments. First, my apologies. In addition to being the elected City Treasurer for the City of Auburn, I'm also the Director of Finance and Treasurer for the San Juan Water District, which has a board of directors as opposed to a city council. I usually do San Juan's quarterly treasurer's report at about the same time I'm doing the City of Auburn's. And so I just got some language mixed up here. So any erroneous reference to the board in the City of Auburn's treasurer's report should be construed to mean the city council. So my apologies on that. The City of Auburn's investment policy was last updated and approved by the board. I don't have the exact date in my head, but sorry, by the council. I think I want to say about 3 years ago. We went through it, former finance director, Andy Heath, and myself went through it in great detail. We had, I believe, an ad hoc committee of the council that went through it with us. It was reviewed by legal and duly adopted by the council. The treasurer's report is typically put on the consent calendar as opposed to the regular agenda of the council, simply because there's no action needed. It's simply a receive and file report. It's required by California Government Code and by the city's own investment policy. And it simply is a statement from myself of what the bank balances were, or the investment market values were as of a specific point in time, the end of the previous quarter. It's a report that's required by the government code to be filed, but it's not indicative of your actual balances as of that date. It's not indicative of your balances as of the day that I'm presenting it. Those balances are better reported to you from your administrative services director with information coming directly out of the city's accounting software, which is now recently converted to Tyler, the Tyler system. And the reason for that is that the Tyler system acts like your checkbook, so to speak. So in Tyler, it keeps a running balance of all of your checks written and all of your deposits posted, just like your own personal checkbook, right? So at any given day, your personal checkbook is going to tell you how much money you actually have. Whereas if you called the bank and asked for a balance, it would be a different number because certain checks haven't cleared. So the treasurer's report is simply letting you know what's in the bank on that specific day. So it's not a very good tool for decision making. It is a good tool if you have a large investment portfolio, so you can see the difference between market value and historical cost, whether you're having, significant gains or losses. The city of Auburn doesn't have an expansive investment portfolio at this time. Your excess funds are invested in LAIF, the local agency investment fund, and in the Placer County investment pool, which is also an investment pool. So both of those pools achieve the city's investment portfolio's objective, which are liquidity, safety, and yield. So the city's investments are constrained by the policy, which is constrained by the government code. Any other questions I can address?
Well, I'm suggesting that maybe the community development block grant checking account has a reported $53,000.
$384,691.04.
And what does that represent?
So the city's finance director, administrative services director in years past made the decision, or the council, I'm not sure who, made the decision to have a distinct and separate checking account for your community development block grant funds that you've previously received. You don't necessarily have to do that. It's just one way of tracking how much CDBG money you have that's unspent. There's other ways that it could be tracked, but someone at some point made the decision to hold it in its own checking account. So those are funds that have a restricted use, a special revenue.
Yes.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Is that all? Does anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. Don, I just wanted to thank you. If I'm not mistaken, we passed that updated policy 2017, 2018 time period. And as I recall, even though I think your time as treasurer is only 2 years after me getting on this council, but we never got anything from the city treasurer previous to your election. And so I'm actually really appreciative. And I think we're in a really good sync of being able to have access to this information quarterly, and then to hear from you each year on, kind of where we are going and what your recommendations are. And so since we've pulled it and since it's a good discussion, I myself am really comfortable with what we've done. Obviously, if this council wants to revisit the policy and change up the frequency, that's our prerogative. But I'll just compare it to prior to your election, 2016, when we didn't really do any updates on where we are. So I appreciate your efforts, Donna.
Thank you very much.
Councilwoman Amara?
Thank you. And I would echo that as well. I appreciate what you're doing and where we're at right now. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think we need any public comment on that? Yes, public comment? Seeing no public comment, we can take it back to council.
Well, I'll move to approve the report of investments for the quarter ending June 30th, 2023.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Amara.
Yes.
Berlant.
Aye.
Holmes.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Riddell Harris.
Aye, motion passes. Moving on to item number 5, the League of Cities Conference Voting Delegate. Councilman Holmes, that was you again.
Yes, well, I know in the past that in addition to the voting members, other members of the city council have gone to this particular,
Yes, and we made sure, if I believe, that we added money in the budget, so anyone who wanted to attend this year was able to attend since it's in Sacramento and it's close.
yes,
Yes,
but I
I think
did,
Alice and I are the only ones that Councilwoman down in Calvillo and I are the only people who have said that they wanted to go so far, but if you'd like to go, you're welcome to.
well, I would like to go, but I think my name has to be added to the list to,
This is just for voting. I don't think that they need to be a voting delegate in order to attend.
Yeah. So if you would like to attend the conference, we can certainly make sure that we get you set up for that and paid up. This is only specifically for the voting delegates. So it's typically the mayor and the vice mayor, if the mayor and vice mayor go.
yes, yeah.
So yes, you're still able to attend. If you let staff know that you're interested, they can register you for going to the
All
event.
right, okay, thank you.
Great. Any more comments on this? Any public comment? Seeing none, I'm going to bring it back.
So I will move to approve the League of California, designate Mayor Dowden Cavillo as the voting delegate at the 2023 Annual League of California Cities Conference and Vice Mayor Riddell Harris as the alternate.
I'll second it.
First and motion and a second. Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Amara.
Yes.
Verland.
Aye.
Holmes.
All right,
Vice Mayor Riddell Harris.
Aye, motion passes. Okay, and then item number 8 is an item that I pulled about the MOU with ARD. There was a item that I remembered us talking about that I didn't see in there, and so I wanted to bring it back just to make sure that we had that item covered. We had talked when we were discussing the pickleball court about making sure that if there were other things that came up, like sound barriers and things like that, that we were sharing in the cost of those additional things that may come up as, you add something new and you never know what comes up after. So I just wanted to make sure that that item was covered and I didn't see it in here.
Good evening, Vice Mayor. Good evening, council members. Jonathan Wright, Community and Economic Development Director. It was something that we had discussed and failed to make it into the document. So I'd like to propose this evening is that we add language in there that requires, should the city request improvements to the multi-use area, could serve a number of different things.
Yes.
That ARD, the city, Skyview Foundation, and if we have a third-party donor, will agree to equally share in the costs therein of those future improvements. And the future requests should be made by the city council at a public meeting, and they shall be commercially reasonable moving forward. So I'd like to propose that language as to fit in there, and I apologize for that. We discussed it and agreed verbally that this was going to happen and never made it into the actual document. So
No problem. Things happen.
as long as you allow us to do that, I would like to propose that language. We'll work off the city attorney and work with Kale, make sure that everything's just right.
Okay.
And
Yeah, I'm fine with the addition of that, moving this forward.
So we can pass it with
Yeah.
the addition of that.
So we just would pass it with that additional language added in.
Can I ask, is ARD amenable to that?
Nice.
Gail Muscat, District Administrator. I can't speak for the board. The board is going to look at this Thursday night. I'll certainly bring this to their attention. It's very similar to the other languages in there. So I'm assuming yes, but all boards are different.
Yes, some boards are probably more complicated, Gail, than others. Understood. Thank you though for tonight.
All right. Any more questions for ARD on this issue? Okay. Any public comment on this issue? No. Okay, then I'm going to bring it back to the council.
I'd like,
You can go.
yeah, I would like to move that. Excuse me, I need my cheat sheet here. That by resolution, we approve an amended and restated memorandum of understanding with the additional language between the city and ARD, and find that it is exempt from CEQA review under the existing facilities provisions of section 15302 and authorize the city manager to sign the MOU and any related documents on behalf of the city.
I will second it.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Mara,
Yes.
Berlant,
Aye.
Holmes,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Riddell Harris.
Aye, motion carries. Okay, item number 10 was pulled, so that is our consent calendar items. We're moving on to public comments. This is a time provided so that the public may speak to the council on any items not on the agenda. Please make your comments as brief as possible, not to exceed 3 minutes. The council cannot act on these items not included in the agenda. Items may be referred to staff or placed on future agendas.
Madam Mayor, I have a public comment.
Yes.
I just wanted to, I know that all of us have received similar and probably additional correspondence over the weekend related to the public event that occurred at the fairgrounds this past weekend. I spoke with one neighbor who lives, I'm going to just make my own guesstimate, but at least a quarter mile away, who registered the sound decibels up to 78. Which I think an average for a normal city ordinance is probably closer to 60. Also, music went beyond 11 p.m., which is beyond our own ordinance. Noting that, and I don't, actually most residents don't realize that the Gold Country Fairgrounds is actually a agricultural district that is essentially run by the state with state appointees. And so is not, even though they are within our borders, is not within the jurisdiction of the city of Auburn. And while we have an MOU with the California Highway Patrol related to certain security and law enforcement elements, I think that I'm going to ask tonight that we direct Sean to go back, meet with the leadership of the Gold Country Fairgrounds and the agricultural district, and try to work on some kind of memorandum of understanding between the city and the fairgrounds so that we can ensure that we've got communication with the fairgrounds and that we can get them to the whatever ability we can to follow our various ordinances. One piece that I'll note, I heard from many residents who live around the area that were very concerned with pedestrians that were leaving the fair, maybe or maybe not intoxicated or on other items. That put our own residents, in addition to their own lives, in danger. And, with our own officers having responsibility for our own issues within the city, that only increased our issues that we were not staffed for, communicated with, and or properly funded to respond to. And so seems like something we should do after even the incident we had last September. I'll remind us all that during the middle of the mosquito fire, the Gold Country Fair was occurring, and the fair wanted to shoot off fireworks during a time period where the sheriff was doing evacuations of the community next to us. And though we were able to intervene and have some great discussions with the fairgrounds, and now this only reiterates the need for us to really work much closer with the leadership of the fairgrounds and ensure that they are being a great partner. And I'll really stress here that they are a huge economic driver. I saw many people who I am assuming attended the event at our local restaurants. And so, it is an economic driver for our community, but it also, is our residents who have to put up with the traffic, the sound, and the other negative issues that come with a large group of people during a short period of time. And so I think that it behooves the fairgrounds to be a good partner of ours, being completely surrounded by our city. But I'm going to, understanding that we're in public comment, ask that we direct the city manager to come back with a plan, if you will, and again, attempt at least, if nothing else, a memorandum of understanding with the agricultural district so that we can address many of our own residents and ours concern. Because again, at the end of the day, the residents hold us accountable to issues that happen within our boundaries. And you can only tell them it's not our problem without having an acceptable response. And that's not one. So with the council's blessing, Sean, I'd like you to move forward with that and bring something back to the council.
Councilwoman Amara?
Yes, and I would like to speak to that as well. I heard from several residences on Auburn Folsom, and they were very understanding of the fair. They said there's a lot of noise then, but This was unexpected. It was 4 days long and the sound was just extreme. They said they didn't get sleep for 4 days. So I agree with Councilman Berlant that we should make every effort to try and help the situation. With the understanding though, that we do like them to have activities that stimulate our growth, our economy in our town. So with that being said, I do wholeheartedly agree with that. Hope we can do something.
I agree. This is an important issue. And also it's important that we get along well with the fairgrounds and that we have a positive relationship with them. So making sure that we're on the same page will help with that. So are there any additional public comments?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I'd like to publicly congratulate our city clerk on achieving the exalted rank of master city clerk. This and wanted to mention that a recent issue of the last Sacramento Business Journal had 4 businesses in the Auburn area listed as the fastest growing businesses in the area of 50 in the greater Sacramento area. One was Dedicated Designs and pre plastics, I guess it is. And Jordan Knighton Architectural Firm and Yamasaki Architects, Landscape Architectures. So I thought that was by having those 4 among the 50 that were listed was quite an accomplishment. So I want to congratulate those businesses for what they're doing. Also, I want to mention that I ran into our former city manager, Bob Richardson, on Saturday night at the Elks Lodge, and he's doing very well and still splitting his time between here and I guess he's got some official job in Hawaii that helps him build up frequent flyer miles or something, because he goes there every couple of weeks. So anyway, that's it.
Thank you. Is there any additional public comments? Okay, I'm just going to do one quick plug for Kittapalooza on September 7th at ARD at Rec Park. They've been working really hard on it. It should be a fun event to bring kids out to. So if anyone's got some kids with something that they need to do on that Thursday night, you should bring them out. Okay.
Oh, I did have one other thing that is that
Yes.
I'm happy to see the city is taking action to engage with the new owners of the Powers Mansion Inn to get that up and running again, which was a significant operation for weddings and other community events. And so that looks like it may be working out. So I guess there's some correspondence going on with them.
Thank you very much. With that, we're going to close public comments and move on to city council business. These items include discussion and or action by the council. They will be enacted upon by separate vote. First, we have the Placer County Mosquito and Vector Control District presentation. Joel Dutner is here to give us a presentation.
Thank you very much. Thank you again for having me. It's been a while since I've been up here, and I'm happy to give our report this year. This is my clicker. It's not clicking. Okay, perfect. So for just a reminder, we're a special district. We're headquartered in Roseville, and we have a substation in near Truckee. And we're here to effectively and efficiently manage risks of vectors and vector-borne disease to protect public health and quality of life. And there's been a lot of need for protection from both of those things this year with our mosquito populations. Next slide. We are, like I said, sorry, these aren't my slides. We are special district. Vice Mayor Rachel Harris serves on our board, and previously Council Member Sandra Amara. So thank you very much for your service, and we appreciate your input. We are currently running 25 full-time staff, 2 seasonals, and 3 interns this year. So we're quite busy doing a lot of good work. Next slide. We cover all of the county, although we do kind of make some distinctions because mosquitoes and other vectors, which are organisms that transmit disease, are different in different parts of our county. So in West Placer, in which I would include Auburn in, West Nile and the mosquitoes that carry West Nile are a primary concern this time of year. We have about 30 different species of mosquito that do 30 different things all throughout the year, throughout the county. So we do have mosquitoes that are east of us here, which are more of a concern in the springtime. And when there's more snow melt coming down from the high country. Ticks obviously are usually a lot of interest here in Auburn. And we do extensive tick surveillance, and we look for Lyme disease and things like that, but not during the middle of the summer because they're typically not active. We spend a lot of time in mid-Placer all the other times of the year when it's moist. And then up in the high country, we have a lot of yellow jackets and rodents and also mosquitoes. There just wasn't enough space in that circle to put another mosquito, I guess. Next slide. We've had a lot of changeover in our staff in the last year or two. This is a up-to-date staff photo. We just hired 5 new employees that are basically heading up our surveillance program. So they're the ones that are going out every day, every week, several times during the week, setting traps, picking up adult mosquitoes, sorting them, counting them, testing for disease. And we're using that information to plan our mosquito control activities. Next slide. The other place we get information is from the public. For a number of years, we spent a lot of time and effort working on our website, to pick up information and requests from the public and get them assigned directly to our staff in the field. In the past, we've entertained a lot of phone calls. That actually isn't the most efficient way of getting our attention or assistance anymore. On our website at placermosquito.org, there's a place for folks to put in a service request directly online, and it literally goes straight to the technician that needs to know about it. This past year, up until year to date, we've had quite a few mosquito calls. We've had a lot of calls for standing water, swimming pools, dead birds, fewer for yellow jackets, and not very many for ticks or other things. And that's about typical. We really appreciate the reports, especially this time of year, on standing water. That helps us get folks out to those areas and prevent those adult mosquitoes. We also appreciate dead bird requests, and I would actually ask for the rest of this summer, if folks do come across dead birds on their properties, to turn them into us. So you can, again, visit our website, or you can give us a call, or you can call the 1-888-WNV-BIRD. That's the statewide hotline. Especially in Auburn, we use adult mosquito trapping, but also dead birds to kind of be an early detection method to see where West Nile is moving. In Auburn, historically, you have had West Nile in Auburn. There's actually, unfortunately, been a couple of fatalities and a handful of human cases over the years. This is the furthest east that we see West Nile in Placer County. So it's not here all the time, but when it's here, we want to know about it and get on top of it. So the reporting dead birds is a really helpful way that residents can help us do that. Okay, I think this is what I just said. The other thing we do get a lot of requests about our mosquito fish. And we do place mosquito fish as a biological control. I know a lot of residents up here who have horse properties and watering troughs and permanent ponds and things like that. We usually do that in the springtime. We actually are pretty much out of fish right now. They've all gone out, and we'll be basically growing them up so we have enough for the next season. Okay. So West Nile is obviously the biggest issue. We are in a record year of West Nile statewide. I think as of this morning, there were 55 human cases statewide. It's not official yet, but I know there are double digits of human cases ready to post from Sacramento and Yolo counties. We have heard of one potential case that has not been officially verified yet in Placer County, and we are expecting to hear more. Part of the reason that we're seeing so much West Nile is probably related to the winter rains and all of the water, but it's really unclear because actually right now we're seeing a decline in mosquito populations. It seems like we're past the peak that we normally have, but West Nile virus in those mosquitoes is still very, very high. So folks should be aware of that. That means if you don't get bitten by a mosquito, you're not going to get sick, guaranteed. So please try to avoid being bitten by mosquitoes. We do our part by identifying risk areas, so we can tell through our surveillance where infected mosquitoes are flying around, and we'll go and we'll knock those down. This is typically happening in West Placer, in parts of Roseville, and Lincoln right now. We haven't had to do those sorts of treatments in Auburn because I think partly we do a lot of preventative work in minimizing mosquito larvae in the water all throughout the year. So if you want to know more about that, again, go on our website. We have a email notification list that you can sign up, and you'll get all sorts of information about what we're spraying and where we're doing it and why and all the rest. Okay, next slide. Okay, again, I guess the best advice that I could give is at this time of year is wear repellent when you're out in the dusk or dawn periods of time. Dump and drain standing water, and then visit that website and learn more about mosquitoes and how to protect yourself from them. Okay. The other issue that I've reported on here in the past are these invasive mosquitoes. So they are invasive because they didn't start here. They came from elsewhere. This is the Aedes aegypti mosquito. That's a picture of them. They're very beautiful mosquitoes, but they also carry new diseases to California like Zika, dengue, chikungunya, yellow fever, and some others. The good news is we still do not have those diseases commonly circulating in the population, but if they show up, places that have Aedes aegypti are at risk of local transmission. So we are managing this. Right now, we have an area that is endemic, meaning we've detected them for more than 2 years. It's in Roseville. We're checking everywhere else, and I think Auburn is on the schedule for the next couple of weeks. So we'll have techs up here doing some invasive mosquito trapping. Hopefully, we'll find nothing. Okay, and then I know I'm getting low on time. These are the places where invasive Aedes live. So they are not large bodies of water. They're not the normal standing water sources that we talk about. They are very small, very cryptic or hidden water sources. These are all pictures of places where my technicians have actually found these mosquitoes. So if you have any of these in your yard, or your friends or families or neighbors do, please encourage them to dump them out, because they can't survive without the water. And this is a great time to do that. Okay. Again, this is what our website looks like. Check us out, sign up for treatment updates or other updates if you would like. And I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Thank you so much for your presentation. This is
Welcome.
always very important, and it's a good time of year to be talking about mosquitoes. Are there any
Indeed.
questions from the council? Yeah.
Thank you, Joel. Excellent work you guys do.
Thank
Really appreciate it. And when is tick season?
So tick season will typically, we'll start looking for ticks right after the first rain or when it starts getting kind of humid in the fall. And we'll go all the way through till basically mosquito season starts.
The grass doesn't necessarily have to be green, it just moist.
Yeah, actually, this time of year, the Lyme disease carrying ticks, the Western black-legged ticks, are really just kind of hiding under the dirt because they don't like the hot, dry temperatures. So they will kind of start going through their life cycle and become active when it's a little bit more humid.
Okay, great. Thank you. And thanks again. Appreciate all your
Thank
hard
you.
work.
Councilman Holmes?
Yes, I have two questions, actually.
Bet.
I saw something about male and female insects that on the East Coast. Is there anything to do with that here?
So, well, there are male and female insects, obviously, right? So, well, with mosquitoes, the females are the ones that are biting. The males are not. And I don't know exactly what you're referring to on the East Coast, but I know there was a recent report of locally transmitted malaria in Maryland. This is actually following up from some cases in Texas and Florida earlier this year. This is a big deal because back in the late 1800s, turn of the 1900s, Auburn, Loomis, Penryn, these areas actually had a huge epidemic of malaria that made basically all the settlers run away for a couple of years. So we still have those mosquitoes here and we are monitoring them, and we actually have some plans to do some further investigations just in case we start seeing malaria coming back. The chance of it is very, very low, but that's what we do. We try to head off problems before they become big problems. So we're watching that very closely. So yeah, that might have been some of the news you saw.
My second question is, I fully understand about standing water. What about moving water?
Great.
We've got various fountains and so forth.
Mhm. That's a great question. And it's very simple. If you imagine yourself as a female mosquito looking for a place to land and lay the eggs on the surface of the water, if the water's moving, they're going to get seasick. They don't like it. Just the movement of the water repels that behavior.
That's get more seasick mosquitoes. Yes,
exactly. So yeah, it's the still standing water for the mosquito, especially the mosquitoes that are carrying West Nile. So.
Any other questions? I just had one quick question about the mosquito fish, because I get a lot of questions about that. When is the time to ask about mosquito fish?
So,
because I know there's a too early time.
You
and
can
there's a
ask-
too late time.
yeah, so folks can ask anytime. We prefer them to ask on our website
Okay.
because what we do is we will batch up all of the pure mosquito fish results, or requests. So these are ones like, hey, you were out here last year. We have this pond. Are you going to put mosquito fish in it again? Put it in the email. And in the springtime, the reason we breed mosquito fish in-house, we have a facility where we breed mosquito fish, is so that as soon as the temperatures in the spring are suitable for their survival, we can start putting mosquito fish out way before mosquitoes come out. So it effectively extends our working field season by about 2 months. But if we can't do that in February usually. And usually we're not going to do it this time of year, partly because they should all be out. And also because we're running after adult mosquitoes this time of year. So that's
So when
about
it
the
starts
time, about
forming-
March, April, May, that kind of time frame is when we try to get most of our mosquito fish out.
Great. Thank you. And thank you so much for your presentation. We really appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks so much.
Next on our council business is, where am I seeing it? Sorry. Pasco County Water Agency informational report. Jonathan Wright will be introducing.
Good evening, once again, Vice Mayor, members of the City Council, Jonathan Wright, Community and Economic Development Director. About 6 months ago, I had the opportunity to attend the Placer Air Pollution Control District's seminar or informational meeting they put out on biomass energy production. There I heard from about 5 different vendors that do biomass energy facilities. And one of them was a company named Auburn. A lot of these companies struggle with the moisture content and the size of the feedstock, which is really interesting to learn about, all the facilities they have to build with it. And then this group at the end that kind of kicked it home said, we're NASA engineers and work for SpaceX, and we found a way to cure all these problems. So it was an interesting presentation. And so at the end of it, they go, and by the way, we're doing a project in Placer County. And we thought, that's interesting. So when Placer County Water Agency came and introduced themselves to Sean, we kind of felt him out on what was going on with their projects. And they told us all about the things that are going on at their Ophir facility right next to our wastewater treatment plant. So wanted to give the council and the public the benefit to hear about both Arbor's technology and what they're doing, as well as Placer County and how it integrates into their capital facilities plan for that site, which is our neighboring property. So I will turn it over to them.
Thanks, Jonathan. Just gonna check real quick. Yeah, okay. All right. Good evening, Vice Mayor, members of the council. My name is Jeremy Shepard. I'm the Director of Technical Services at Placer County Water Agency. Thank you for having us tonight. I'm excited to kind of give an update on a large project that we have coming up, our Ophir Water Treatment Plant located off of Ophir Road, and also give an update on some other efforts that we have out there as well. Oh, it was working. There it goes. All right. So I'll give a brief update on our treatment plant, and then I'll talk a little bit about our energy planning as it relates to that whole campus site, because we do have a lot of infrastructure or planned infrastructure out there. And then I'll hand it over to our folks at Arbor Energy to kind of talk a little bit more about what Jonathan mentioned in terms of the type of facility that they're looking into. So with that, here is a photo of our Ophir Road pump station. So this project was completed in 2007, located on Ophir Road, as I mentioned. And we've invested just over $185 million in order to get our American River water supply to this site right here. And the way that's done is we have a pump station down at the river. It pumps water up a couple of 100 feet into the Auburn Tunnel. And the Auburn Tunnel is actually located about 200 feet directly below this pump station that you see here. This is also kind of the crossroads of PCWA's two main water supplies. I just mentioned the American River supply from the tunnel, but right behind this facility is PG&E's South Canal, and that's where we get the water from their PG&E Drum Spalding project. So those are our two main sources, and it's a critical location for us. You'll notice the fruit shed kind of style architecture theme there. We do intend to kind of use this theme as kind of a guide for our future Ophir water treatment plant. So here's a rendering of the Ophir water treatment plant. We're anticipating completing the design of this facility in 2024. And we plan to go out to bid and award a construction contract in 2025, hopefully complete construction around 2028, and bring the facility online in an operation in 2029. Couple of things here. This is the City of Auburn's wastewater plant facility, as you can see behind the proposed site. This is all a rendering. It does not exist yet. Here is the Ophir Road pump station that does exist that I mentioned. And then I'm just going to point out this parcel just south of our future water treatment plant. And I'll get to that in a little bit. Here's another view of the rendering. This one is a street level view from Ophir Road, looking at the facility. And as you can imagine, with the pump station that I talked about and a 10 million gallon a day water treatment plant facility, these facilities can be very energy intensive. And so the last time I checked, my home energy bill was not getting any cheaper. And I'm not anticipating that the agency's bill will be getting any cheaper either. And so we really wanted to look into some sort of investment out at this facility and this complex to kind of address future energy needs. And so with that said, we wanted to be able to offset the energy that was associated with it, over their lifetime. So that parcel that I pointed out before, this is another picture of that. It's about a 9-acre parcel. We currently are leasing it to international line builders. But we're considering building a future energy facility at this location. It's currently zoned for industrial use. And we thought that this would be a prime site for a facility to help assist us in our energy goals. And so our energy goals are listed here. We want to protect ourselves from power outages. It's an essential facility. As you know, a lot of PSPS events occur in the area. And so anything we can do to mitigate that is of interest to us and our ratepayers. We want to protect ourselves against escalating electricity costs. We'd like to participate in renewable energy supply and reduced greenhouse gas emissions. And supply a sustainable destination for biomass from the forest health work that we're doing up the hill. And finally, be able to support fuel reduction in the region and in the area, especially where, the wildland urban interfaces are at. So heavy fuel sites right up against, more urban areas such as the city of Auburn. So PCWA has invested heavily for several years now up the hill with forest management efforts to help protect and preserve our watershed and thin out overgrown areas in hopes to help mitigate wildfires. A biomass facility provides an opportunity for us to achieve the goal of fuel reduction as well as offset our energy costs. The past few years, we've been looking into biomass, and traditional biomass facilities just didn't seem to pencil out for us until now. So we are exploring a public-private partnership with our Auburn Energy to potentially build a state-of-the-art biomass facility. And it's very unique, and I don't want to steal their thunder. So at this time, I'd like to bring up Sutton Goldner with Auburn Energy to talk a little bit more about the facility and the technology.
All right. Thank you, Jeremy. As Jeremy mentioned, I'm Sutton Goldner, Head of Business Development with Auburn Energy. Are you okay? All right. As Jeremy mentioned, there's a 9.9 acre site next to the planned expansion of PCWA project down on Ophir Road. And we plan on utilizing that space for the construction of a state-of-the-art bioenergy facility. To get into a bit of the metrics of it, this facility will leverage technology from the rocketry industry that will allow us to convert heterogeneous waste biomass, which we'll get into kind of what that means, into carbon negative energy. This planned facility will provide 3 megawatts of behind the meter power to PCWA's planned expansion and take in about 35,000 bone dry tons of biomass from this region and beyond. For those familiar with forestry work, the fuel loading in the forest is one of the biggest challenges, in finding ways to sustainably monetize it has been a state level goal for a long time now. As mentioned, it will be on that 10-acre site, 9.9 acre site. We're planning to aspirationally kick off construction in 2025 and have the plant operational by 2026. As mentioned, we're working with PCWA as kind of the project host. We're also working with Fluor Daniels as our lead EPC, and are working with also technologies from the Gas Technology Institute, which is a large technology developer of these types of technologies. As both Jeremy and John actually indicated, there are a few really big challenges in conventional biomass utilization, which is why a lot of projects that have been proposed to date haven't really succeeded. The first is a high feedstock price for what waste biomass is. It is incredibly expensive to pay the crews to treat the land and create essentially this residue that you can run a facility off of. Ultimately, biomass is not a great carrier of energy. It is very moist usually, and it takes a lot of processing. And so you really need to have a business case that can make a high value product out of this. The feed is also inconsistent. If you look at,
Can you just speak up a little bit?
Oh,
or
sorry.
Your mic.
sorry about that. The feed is also very inconsistent, which can prevent challenges if you're trying to utilize it in an industrial process. And finally, of course, really key is local air quality concerns. If you look at traditional biomass facilities, they have particulate emissions, even though they are carbon neutral. And we've toured a lot of the facilities in the area, Rio Bravo, Rockland. We've been to a few of their areas and recognize that essentially that's not a facility that could be built today. And so we are taking these into account as we're designing the system, and this has gone into our technology selection kind of from the ground up. We're taking this clean sheet approach to plant design that we hope will kind of address a lot of these key issues in its design. And so to that end, these are some of the technologies that we're using. Essentially, we take in these waste biomass streams and we convert them into a biocarbon and then a syngas. These are kind of in our technology wheelhouse. The technologies we're using there, oxygasification and torrefaction, make these waste streams very consistent so that they're easy for us to utilize. We're then leveraging the, as mentioned, technology from the rocketry industry, which is oxycombustion and CO2 power loops, which are a new type of technology that allow for the easy capture of associated emissions. At planned steady state, we'll have a drastically reduced emissions profile because after the syngas step, everything is in a closed loop where we'll have complete control over how it leaves our process. We won't have a smokestack that kind of will be open to air from downstream of there. Our main products, as we mentioned, are the electricity, which we'll be providing behind the meter to PCWA to help them increase the stability of their own operations, a water stream that will manage through one of the nearby water treatment plants, and then a pure stream of CO2 that we'll be taking into the Central Valley for sequestration at a site built by one of our project partners in most likely Yuba County. But we're still monitoring that side of things. That's a high-level overview of the project and kind of what we're working on, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Council, do you have any questions? Councilwoman Amara?
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
Or do you want to go?
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I'm not a scientist. So if on the last slide, it says, okay, so you break down the biocarbon with an oxy gasification. What is that?
So a gasifier is any piece of technology that, as the name implies, can take solids and convert them into gases. And what we're doing here, the torrefaction step, let's take it back a step real quick, converts the waste biomass into what's called biocarbon, but you can think of it almost like charcoaling, but it's a lot lighter and lower temperature than a charcoaling process. And again, to use the charcoal analogy, imagine you took a piece of wood, you hit it with a hammer, it's just going to be a squished piece of wood. If you hit a piece of charcoal with a hammer, it's going to break into a ton of little pieces. And that's exactly what we want, because those little pieces will go into this gasifier and very consistently convert into a syngas. So it takes in this just powderized substance, and then out of it comes a syngas is kind of just a colloquialism for really a mixture of a lot of gases. And this gas will contain primarily hydrogen and carbon monoxide, but again, it's completely contained in the pipe.
And then the oxycombustion then breaks it down further?
Yep. And so in the oxycombustor, we're feeding it with pure oxygen. And that allows the reactions to occur incredibly quickly and in a very localized and controlled space. And that is essentially what is providing the power to the system, is as the hydrogen and carbon monoxide gets converted into water and CO2, that's where the energy in the system comes from.
And then I wasn't clear where will the CO2 go?
So the CO2 will be essentially goes through the cycle and is purified. And then we will be utilizing trucks to move it offsite into the Central Valley. And then there it will be going in what's called a class. In a contained canister. It'll actually be probably liquefied. And it will go into what's called a Class 6 well. And a Class 6 well is an EPA certified asset that is used for the subsurface injection of CO2. There's a kind of history of doing it out east. There's a lot of assets that are doing, I believe, in Indiana and Illinois, as well as more conventional assets in Louisiana and Texas. And this is kind of part of California's push for large scale carbon removal. And so you're taking this liquid CO2 and actually putting it back into the same formations that held natural gas for.
Now, is the liquid CO2 combustible?
No, it is not combustible. It is not a, it would actually put out a fire, because similar to kind of how a fire extinguisher works, right? It's a lot of CO2 that's whipped up with other chemicals.
Okay. And what's your anticipation when you're up and running for the amount of trucks that will be leaving the facility?
Yep. We're estimating at this point kind of 10 to 20 or so trucks a day. We're currently in pre-application of our CEQA process. We're working with the county now to, flag the relevant items. I think truck traffic will be a big one that we'll perform a pretty standard traffic study on. Due to where the site is, trucks can actually access it very easily off I-80, going onto Ophir Road, and really never passing through a residential community, because kind of down Ophir Road from our site is a lot more kind of industrially
You
built
have
up.
10 to 20 a day?
Yeah.
Leaving the facility, going down 80?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have right now.
Councilman Blunt?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Just a couple questions. First, thank you for being here and giving us an update on the project. I just want to kind of jump in on my colleagues' questions related to, where's the CO2 going? Obviously, carbon capture and storage, is the future of what many in the gas industry are looking at, but a lot of discussion on pipelines and moving it in a critical state through that. Is that at all being discussed, or right now are you purely looking at moving it through trucking?
Yeah, right now we're only looking at moving it through trucking. California has a memorandum or moratorium.
Yep.
Probably not pronouncing that word right. On utilizing pipelines for CO2 transport until the federal Department of Transportation approves, new guidelines. And so for this project, as well as other, future projects, we're currently premising truck
And
transport.
obviously they're developing those regulations right now. PHMSA is the federal government. So I was just curious if there was a future discussion of would you ever go away from trucking? But it sounds like for this project, it's being penciled in.
Yeah, for this project, the
truck.
volumes aren't really great enough to justify a pipeline.
Got it. Okay, understood. Maybe I missed it, so I apologize. The amount of energy that's produced, is that solely to power the facility and the future facilities there for PCWA?
Yes. So,
Well, yeah. So we do not know that answer entirely yet. And so I'll phrase it in terms of the intent is to assist with our load demands behind the meter. However, until this site fully gets developed, some of that excess energy potentially may need to go to the grid. And so we are also potentially exploring that option as well. Is that?
Yeah, thank you. That was exactly what I was looking for. So are you having active conversations with Pioneer Energy of the potential of local purchase of that power and local usage of it?
Not at this time.
Okay. Our
And the primary reason is we're still trying to figure out how much the potential export would be. And it's also on a distribution line versus a transmission line. And so CalISO and those folks aren't necessarily the overseer of the particular line that we'd be generating to.
Got it. Our mayor obviously chairs and sits on Pioneer Energy, but she's not here tonight, but definitely something I know she would probably either already know the answer to or ask the same question. My last question is for you, Jeremy. I didn't see on at least the maps that I could see, but unrelated to your energy initiative here. What's the plan with the historic Hallbaum home that's on the site when you start to develop the rest of the property?
So at this time, so I should go back in history. So when we completed the CEQA process, roughly 2008 for the Ophir water treatment plant, one of the mitigation measures was to preserve that facility because we ended up going through the process of getting it labeled as a historical site.
And so right now we are continuing to maintain and preserve that facility. But recently we're also looking to entertain potential relationship with nonprofit organizations in the area to see if they can somehow utilize that facility in a manner that we currently aren't. It was our original vision at that time that we were going to convert that house into office space, and it just did not financially pencil out for us. And so we've identified office space elsewhere, but that doesn't mean that there can't be an opportunity for someone else to explore the use of both the house and that facility. And so we're open to.
Yeah, that's great. I
those
mean, it's a
discussions.
beautiful location, and even with, your building in the background, the parking that's right out in front. So, I know that there was some earlier board discussion of what to do with the residents, and, tearing it down, I'm glad is not at least in the immediate plans here.
Right.
So, thank you. Thanks
You're
for being here and for your presentation.
Thank you for
Always
having
appreciate PCWA.
Thank you. Councilman Holmes?
Yeah, so I have a question about that as well. I know there was quite a bit of nervousness about that historic ranch house. And as I understand it, there's somebody working on developing to put that on the National Register of Historic Places.
It is already, I believe, on the National Register of Historical. Yeah, we went through that process about 10 years ago. Oh, it's on the county. It's not on the,
On the
okay.
county list, yeah,
Okay,
Yeah.
I misspoke.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm sure the Placer County Historical Society would be interested in talking to you about possibly using that as a base for their operations. So,
And I believe they're one of the they're one of the nonprofits we're talking with. Yep.
Is that all of your questions?
that's it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've got a couple
sorry.
questions. Sorry.
I keep trying.
Yeah. I know, we're almost done. Forgive me, I'm an energy nerd. I work for
Oh.
the utility. So this is more of my kind of thing. As we've talked to PCWA, we're looking at doing biomass at our facility right next door as well. So that's great. I think this has some great synergies. We obviously have the same thinking of needing to supply our own energy and be green and have some economic benefits out of it as well. So obviously our timing is great minds think alike, which is great. I had some questions about the technology. What's the timeline for that you think you would be able to get this built if it was a decision that it was going to happen?
Yeah. So we're planning on, we're planning on, our green light schedule. So this will let me go backwards. There we go. Is starting construction in 2025.
Oh, I see it now.
And of course that assumes kind of green lights in a lot of different avenues, of course, in project development. We've kind of built in a rather healthy commissioning window due to, again, the first nature of this technology, but are hoping to start operations kind of in the 2026 timeframe.
Okay. And is it your anticipation that the CEC will allow for carbon sequestration to be used as an emissions capture at that point, or is this strictly done as an R&D type project? Because I know the CEC is right now not allowing that as an emission.
Yes. So we're actually leveraging the negative emission profile of it, not through like traditional like LCFS pathways,
Okay.
but actually rather on the voluntary carbon markets.
Okay.
Which is kind of, again, part of the unique approach that we're utilizing. There's also federally guaranteed credits, 45Q most notably, that we'll be taking advantage of. But the CEC, due to the size of this project, they won't really be involved in the bringing it online because it's 3 megawatts.
Mhm.
And then, we're kind of steering clear of, while California takes its time to kind of resolve how it wants to approach a lot of these issues, a lot of the state level initiatives.
So that's why it would need to stay internal and be for PCWA and not go out on the grid, because otherwise the emissions would have to be part of
We
whatever
are-
utility. It's
Yes. So
like
yeah.
that.
So we're working with the air district now to make sure that we're obviously in compliance with the regulations on their side regarding, short-term particle emissions and criteria.
Okay.
But then, insofar as the grid, that's one of the advantages of having a behind the meter customer is, the interconnection process working with PG&E can be difficult. And so that was a really big draw for us about being able to stay behind the meter.
Okay. When you were talking about the water that came out of this would go to some kind of water treatment plant, is it clean water that would go back out, or does it considered used water that has to go to a wastewater treatment plant?
So I just want to make sure I understand. You're talking about the process,
I'm so-
Arbor's process?
Yeah, out of the process comes
Yep.
some water, which I wouldn't assume would be water that could go directly into drinking water, or would it? I'm not sure which one it is.
So yeah. So we're going through the technology validation now, and a huge part of that will actually inform us about what that stream looks like.
Okay,
In theory, it is clean, but we're obviously wanting to make sure that before we do anything with it, that it's very above board. We don't see it as it wouldn't be a huge revenue driver if we could utilize it. And if we need to dispose of it, it's not a huge, net negative to the process. So of course, we're aiming for real conservatism on that side of things.
Okay.
But at this point, yeah, we're trying to see kind of what will end up in the water, but I don't know if you.
Yeah, and it's still real early on, so we don't even know how much water it will produce. If there was way back in there, I don't know if I can get back to my slides or not, maybe not. Okay. Anyway, I was going to show a picture of there's an opportunity there where they can plumb into our kind of runoff system. See that big pump? Maybe I'll start right there. So just right of the wastewater plant, thank you, is what we call our transfer basin. And we have drainage that goes in from our site into this basin. We also pump into this basin from the American River. We also allow water from the South Canal into this basin. So it's used to raw water. And it's very likely that the byproduct water that's being created from their process is going to be of such that we could mix it in as potential source water.
Okay.
And then use it as source water to go into our treatment plant process.
okay. And then this technology seems like it's very R&D. There's not a site that we could go to that already has this. This is brand new, right?
So a lot of the technologies have been proved out by other companies in larger type facilities. Really what we're doing is bringing a lot of them together and then making some slight tweaks to especially the power generation side of things. So the gasification technology has been developed by GTI. They've actually worked with a technology company in China to use it on an 800 ton per day system, which is a rather large power facility. Upstream of that, the torrefaction equipment is it's off the shelf. We were just in Canada touring a provider of that. And then the supercritical CO2 loop and the oxy combustor were first pioneered by a company called Net Power in LaPorte, Texas in 2015. Their premise was utilizing natural gas and running it through a cycle for carbon neutral power. And so our thinking is that by taking the waste biomass streams and converting those to a gas before utilizing them in a very similar manner, you get essentially highly carbon negative power. And so all of these have been used by different companies in different areas. I can also, their company Clean Energy Systems was looking to some rather similar technologies down in the valley, I think in around the Modesto area, I believe, on a project. And they actually, I think they got pretty far in their project planning. Actually, they ran into more financial challenges than technology challenges.
Okay, sounds very similar to our project. A proven technology you're putting together in kind of a new way and then trying to prove that it works that way.
Yeah.
Okay, and then yours is ours is at kind of lower temperature, lower pressure. Yours is at a very high temperature, high pressure.
Yep.
So
Or high pressure, middle temperature, depending on your definition of high.
I guess depending on your
Yeah.
definition. Are there any we're in a high fire area. Is
Yep.
there any concerns about that or how
Yeah.
you would mitigate any kind of
Yep.
I mean, things that are at high pressure,
Yep.
there's
Yep.
always things that can happen. So is
Exactly.
there any mitigation that you're working on for that?
For sure. So one of the advantages we have is, again, all this technology was originally designed to be used on spacecraft. And fortunately for us, our wastewater or our treatment or water power plant doesn't have to move, which means we can really get very, robust with a lot of different safety factors, really over engineering a lot of the design because weight is no longer a concern for us as it was kind of in the past. So we'll have, the actual high pressure section of this entire process is incredibly contained. It's probably the size of maybe, a large table. So we can really make it rather strong and, put it in an enclosure that's fully safe and certified to kind of the ASME standards.
Okay, great. I think those were all the big things that I had. The only thing that I would ask is that our staff and with our project work with you because
Yep.
20 trucks plus if we have some trucks for our project plus our own trucks for water treatment, the neighborhood will, even if it's just on Ophir Road, they might get a little sensitive to a lot of extra trucks, even if it's just on Ophir Road. So we might need to do some coordination to make sure that we're not overwhelming the neighborhood, since we both have similar projects, trying to do similar things of bringing in something and taking something out of the locations. So I think that would be important.
100%.
So that's all I had. Go ahead.
Madam Vice Mayor, if I could just ask a clarifying question to Sean, what's the status of the project that's being referenced at the sewer, our facility? So I thought it was, I don't remember all the caveats we put on, but I thought we were more in a conceptual phase versus an actual approved project.
Yeah, from my understanding, council hasn't actually approved something yet, although we're waiting to get information back from Collector on whether it's, I mean, for the planning process, right? We're looking at it basically as any other development project. So they need to submit an application, do environmental study, all that stuff. So we're waiting to gather that information so we can review that and then bring it to council and move forward if we move forward.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that because I think the point's though super valid that we really need to make sure we're having some discussions amongst each other, including the air quality district, because it is kind of a unique fact that we have, potentially two projects right next door to each other. And so even down to, the air district perspective of what that means to have them, back to back. But thank you for that update.
Yeah, but we haven't entered into a lease agreement yet with Collectron, for example, and we don't have the actual project submitted to council yet.
As I heard from them recently, and they had a few months ago, they got a long list from staff of all of the things that they wanted to have their formal application. And so they're planning on submitting that in the next couple of weeks. So we'll see what that turns out to be. Okay, that's all I had. Thank you very much.
Vice Mayor Riddell Harris, I have a member that has joined on Zoom that has a question for PCWA on this item.
Oh, great. Yes, we
she was
forgot to open a public comment.
Oh. She was asking if Placer Housing Trust is one of the nonprofits that PCWA is discussing possible use for the historic structure with.
Placer Housing Trust? No, not to my knowledge,
Thank you.
but we'll make note of it.
Thank you.
Is there any other public comment on this item? Okay. So moving on to the city manager report.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. I got a couple of things quickly, and then I'm also going to ask Menjel to give us his bi-weekly update on the paving project. So first, backing up to the Dry Diggins festival that just occurred, I've fielded at least 6 phone calls a day, multiple emails. I asked both the police department and the fire department to just kind of give me a summary of how much time they've spent. Fire was pretty minimal. They didn't have any specific calls or anything. There's a little bit of time that they had to go through and make sure the ingress and egress was appropriate. I'll back up and say that we weren't notified of the actual event until Friday when the event started. And from what I understand, CHP wasn't notified until I think either Wednesday or Thursday. So there can obviously be better communication about the whole thing all the way around. Police reported that they had 27 calls for service totaled by the communication center, which spent an average of 1 to 3 minutes on each call. 4 calls for service were handled by the patrol. 2 officers spent 7 minutes on 1 call. 1 officer spent 17 minutes on a 3rd call, and then 1 officer spent an hour on a 4th call. And then there was a EMS medical aid as well. So just a kind of snapshot on the amount of call volume that we got. Most of those calls, by the way, the 27 calls, I think at least 20 of them occurred on Friday, the first day of the festival, when all of the sound was happening all at once.
I don't think there was a lot of communication that this was
There's-
happening for the average citizen who wasn't planning on attending.
There certainly was not.
Okay.
And it's an issue that we'll be working with per the direction of council. I wanted to give just a plug for some of our employees, longtime employees that I'm going to start doing this at each council meeting, by the way. So just celebrating staff anniversaries for folks who have that we've seen significant anniversary dates. So Russell Koch, who is one of our public works employees, he's worked for the city 23 years this month. Andy Firkin, who also works in public works, actually in the sewer department, 17 years this month. Anthony D'Ambrosi on the fire side, 11 years this month. Started when he was 5. And then Matthew Bowers on the fire department for 5 years this month. And I'm going to turn it over to our public works manager, Menjel Dean, to give you the typically the usual update on paving, which is going rather swimmingly, I would say.
I disagree.
Of course.
Good evening, Council. Menjel Dean, Public Works Manager. Just to, as the city manager mentioned, you can see out in the streets, there's a lot of roadway work done. We're at the closing points at this point. All things that are going to be paved within this round are completely paved. At this point, you're going to see over the next 4 days, the raising of ironing. And by the end of the week, we should have all the striping wrapped up. There is some brief sidewalk work being done in front of the police department. It was pretty deteriorated. And we looked at it after we completed the roadway project and decided that it probably should be addressed at this time. So that's what you're seeing. And you'll see some traffic signal work in the city as well. But other than that, the roadway project is wrapped up for this year, and we should be back very shortly with a notice of completion to you.
We're also moving the crosswalk, right?
Correct. So one of the things that happened as part of the sidewalk improvements, you'll notice that at Oakwood, there's sidewalk crossed directly in front of into a fire hydrant and a traffic signal, which isn't very ADA compliant. So what we've done is move the signals to the southern portion of the roadway. So it now crosses at Meritage Auto's parking lot, closer to where PD is at. So instead of crossing across the street, you now cross there, and there's going to be no crossing going, if this makes any sense at all, on Lincoln Way to directly where Meritage Service Center is at. So closest to us is where the new crosswalk's going, directly across to the church.
Okay.
Yes, so the light's already been moved. So if you take a look at it, that was one of the things that was being accomplished earlier today. So the light was moved earlier this morning, along with, I hate to do it, but there was a tree that was on that side. I know, but it damaged the sidewalk and it pushed up the limbs and it was raising the road. So it had to be removed. So we did have to grind out one tree, take it down and grind out the stump this morning. Wasn't super happy about it, but we had to do it. It was destroying the infrastructure and it made some of the ADA compliance a little bit more challenging. So it was one of the things that had to happen.
Closer to us on the other
Closer
side of
to
the
us,
turn,
yes,
on the other
right
side.
on the PD side. And you can't cross Lincoln Way at the Meritage side anymore.
There's also a really big, I don't know if it's an elm tree, but right in front of the church on that side, that one is also lifting up the sidewalk, and the roots are actually growing over the top of the sidewalk now. So we were out there looking at that today and trying to figure out how to make sure that we can save that, because that tree is enormous, really beautiful tree. So we're going to do everything that we can do to save that. But we'll probably end up having to cut some of those roots out just to at least take off the lips that are starting to pop up on the sidewalk.
Yes, the city manager mentioned we're certainly monitoring that tree. The biggest concern right now is that there's a brick wall along the church that the roots may be migrating towards, and we don't want to start to see damage there because, as you mentioned, there's already damage to the sidewalk and a small rock formation that's in front of it. So we'll monitor it over the next couple of months and make sure that it doesn't do any further damage.
Yeah.
I understand the need for the tree to remove. One thing I'd ask that maybe we do a little research into, like the city of Sacramento has done. They've done a very good job of adding in, I don't even know what the material is, but it allows the water to permeate into what appears to be a concrete type of material. And so you don't have the roots push up to the top to try to get water, because the water's able to actually go permeate into the sidewalk. And so, we've lost a lot of really good trees, even down in Old Town because of this issue, which again, totally understand that we need to not have tripping hazards. But we also don't want to lose all of our trees. And so this problem will only continue to get worse as trees get more mature. And so I would definitely encourage us to try to find other potential options. And then we do have, the tree preservation fund that we really aren't tapping into. To me, that seems like a very appropriate thing for us as a council to allocate money out of that fund to preserve these trees that are along our urban core that shade our roadway. So just something to think about.
Yeah. And we also need to look at, the trees that we actually plant and make sure they're trees that have deep roots instead of flat roots. You can also do stuff like tree wells, right? So you plant them inside of a 5-foot concrete box or something like that to make the roots go down instead of having to go flat out. There's ways to mitigate that. The existing trees that we have, the beautiful trees that took forever to grow, are the ones that are obviously the issue. So we'll look at ways that we can mitigate that and not have to cut those out.
But, I point to Upper Lincoln Way, that road was not lined with the trees that we have today that long ago, just a couple decades now.
Yep.
And so, I think we really need to be forward thinking now. I know that the DBA has talked about putting more trees, and I think the Sustainability Committee along the upper portion of High Street. But again, we're only making the problem worse as we remove more and more of our trees. Mendel, I totally understand.
Yeah.
Safety first. But anyways, appreciate you at least considering looking into it.
I also agree. I also think that the type of tree that you select
Yeah.
having to do with the size it's going to be at. A lot of people like to pick trees because they're pretty when you first plant them. And then by the time that they are at full size, they're just way bigger than they should be for wherever they're planted.
Yep.
So trying to think that through and make smarter choices on which trees we're planting and sidewalks makes sense too.
It's a tough predicament because you've got trees that'll, you don't want to plant a tree that's got deep roots by a sewer line, for example, because they love sewer water. And so finding the right one for the right spot is really important.
Yeah.
If we go back and replace those. And so, that's something that we might be looking at, is replacing the one that we took out with a tree that's not going to be growing all over with the roots all over the place and bumping up the sidewalk. We'll figure that out. We'll look at it.
Great. Thank you.
For land. Placing their resources would be a really good
Yeah, it's a good idea. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mendel.
My pleasure.
City manager, is that the end of your report? Okay, great. Now we have city council committee reports. Do you have anything to report? Councilmember Mara?
Quickly, the DBA was going to have their Funk Box Derby. However, that's been canceled and that'll be in the spring. They're having some coordination efforts, problems, issues. And I will be attending PCTPA on Wednesday for the mayor. And I just want to remind everybody that I was told we have 7, is it electric bikes at the courtyard? Or are they just bicycles? Oh, the racks, yes. And so sustainability is going to be utilizing and hopefully tap into that resource that's been sitting out there. That's all I have to report.
Great. Thank you. Councilman Holmes, do you have anything? Well, mine was going to be about vector control, but they already did that. So if there's no other business, then we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Were you betting on it or something? Hey?